Hey there, welcome back. Whether you're curled up on the couch or just trying to quiet your brain after a long day, you're in the right place. The Minecraft world is booted up and I've got an hour of wild Reddit stories queued up. And the world outside? We're leaving it on pause for a while. There's something oddly satisfying about watching karma arrive with perfect comedic timing, especially when it's served alongside some peaceful pixelated mining. Like, how does someone steal their roommate's skincare and rehearse their apology in the mirror? The audacity is breathtaking. And let's be honest, sometimes the best part is watching someone get taken down by the very system they created to hurt others. So get cozy and stick around because the drama ahead, it's layered. We've got petty revenge that involves industrial kitchen equipment, family betrayals that unravel in front of a live audience, and one story so deviously clever it'll make you side-eye your ceiling. Let's jump in. I was 32 weeks pregnant with my first child when my younger sister Amanda offered to throw me a baby shower. She was excited, maybe a little too excited. She kept calling it our big event, which I chalked up to her usual flair for dramatics. Amanda's always been a little extra, the kind of person who makes every situation about herself, even when she's just a supporting character. But I figured fine, let her have this. If she wanted to play party planner and send out frilly invitations, go for it. I had bigger things to focus on, like waddling through my third trimester without crying over spilled milk. The shower was beautiful, I won't lie. Soft blues and golds everywhere, custom cupcakes, a diaper cake that could have been engineered by NASA, and little honeycomb paper baby bottles hanging from the ceiling. Amanda really went all out. People kept saying it was the best baby shower they'd ever been to, and I kept thinking, wow, maybe I've underestimated her. And then came the surprise announcement. Right after I finished opening gifts, Amanda stood up and clinked her mimosa glass with her nail. Everyone quieted down, all eyes on her. She smiled sweetly, then put her hand on her stomach and said, I wasn't going to say anything yet, but I can't hold it in anymore. I'm pregnant too. Cue the squeals, the gasps, the clapping. Suddenly, my baby shower turned into her impromptu announcement party, and I just sat there, blinking like a confused sea otter. I remember glancing over at my husband and seeing him mouth, What the hell? We both knew Amanda had broken up with her boyfriend 2 months ago, and the last we heard, she was taking time to work on herself. But now she was glowing and tearfully, talking about how excited she was to go on this journey with her big sister. I smiled, because what else was I going to do? Punch her in the middle of a room full of people and pastel macarons? But something felt off. Amanda was too polished. Her story didn't make sense. And when our cousin asked if she'd had her first ultrasound, she sort of stammered and said, It's early. Like really early. Then she changed the subject. That was the first red flag. The second came the next day when my mum called and casually asked if Amanda and I were planning joint nursery themes. I laughed and said, Let's wait until we confirm she's not just having a burrito baby. Mum didn't laugh. She got quiet and said I was being cruel. That's when I realized Amanda's little announcement had worked. She had successfully shifted the spotlight. People were already talking about her baby names, not mine. I tried to let it go. I really did. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. So I started watching her closely. She didn't stop drinking wine at family dinners. She kept forgetting to take prenatal vitamins. At one point, she mentioned taking ibuprofen for a headache, which is a big no-no during pregnancy. When I asked her about it, she got defensive and said she was managing her pregnancy in her own way. Sure, like a reverse doula. Then came the kicker. I offered to take her to her OB appointment, partly as a peace offering, partly because I wanted to see if there was an appointment. She said she already had a ride. When I asked who, she froze for half a second and then said, a friend from work. Amanda works remotely. With increasing suspicion, I did something I'm not proud of. I snooped. I found the name of the clinic she supposedly went to and called to ask if they had a patient by her name. They said no. That's when I knew. Amanda wasn't pregnant. She faked the whole thing to hijack my baby shower. Now here's where I had a choice. Confront her privately or go full scorched earth. I chose the latter. The opportunity came at Sunday dinner, when the whole extended family was over. Amanda was once again holding court, talking about baby registries and feeling flutter kicks. I excused myself, went to the hallway, and came back with a manila folder like I was about to serve her with divorce papers. I opened it and pulled out a printout of the email from the clinic, confirming she was not a patient. I also included screenshots of her text messages from the week of the shower where she'd mentioned drinking, lifting heavy boxes, and, in one, bragging about how she'd stolen the show. I laid the papers down on the table and said, "Hey, Amanda, quick question. How far along are you again?" She blinked. 9 weeks, I smiled. That's so weird, because this clinic has no record of you, and your texts say you were drinking champagne that week. So, unless you're growing a baby in your imagination, I think we all deserve an explanation. The room went silent. My mom looked like she might faint. My aunt dropped a fork. Amanda just sat there, red-faced and breathing like a bull about to charge. And then she did explode. She screamed at me for invading her privacy, accused me of being jealous that she was finally getting some attention, and stormed out in tears. That night, she nuked the family group chat with a 17-paragraph message about how she'd never felt so attacked and how she didn't owe anyone proof of her body. But the damage was done. People started texting me privately, apologizing for being sucked into her act. A few defended her until I sent them the screenshots. Amanda eventually admitted to faking the pregnancy, said she just felt left out and wanted to be included in something big. She didn't apologize, she just said, "I thought you of all people would understand how hard it is to be forgotten." Yeah, because nothing says, "Please don't forget me," like emotionally hijacking someone else's baby shower and pretending to grow a human being. She's still on family timeout. No one really knows what to say to her, and honestly, I'm fine with that. My baby was born healthy and surrounded by people who love him, and the only drama I had to deal with during labor was a nurse who kept singing along to the soundtrack. Amanda, last I heard, she's planning a solo trip to find herself. Hopefully, she finds an ounce of shame while she's at it. If you've made it this far into the chaos, you're as addicted to Reddit drama as I am. Make sure to subscribe if wild family betrayals and petty revenge are your kind of therapy. Anyway, speaking of family members doing the absolute most for attention, wait until you hear how one guy's brother-in-law turned a wedding rehearsal into a career-ending disaster. Our wedding was almost perfect. Beautiful venue, good food, people we loved. I say almost perfect because of one walking HR violation in a navy blue suit. My brother-in-law, Trent. Trent is my wife's older brother. He works in corporate HR, and if you just cringed a little, yeah, you know the type. On paper, he's successful. Decent salary, corner office, the whole, "I'm not like other men," I read Jordan Peterson energy. He'd always struck me as someone who thought he was the smartest guy in the room, even when the room was full of people with actual functioning empathy. Leading up to the wedding, we had some minor drama, typical stuff. But Trent wasn't really involved, or so I thought. We kept the guest list tight. Around 75 people. Ceremony was outside, reception indoors at a local vineyard. Classy, cozy, and not cheap. Everyone seemed to be having a good time. The food came out hot. The speeches were actually emotional without turning into awkward stand-up comedy sets. My best man got a little choked up. My wife's maid of honor cried. But it was sweet. People laughed, clinked glasses, cheered. This was the vibe we wanted. And then Trent stood up. Now let me be clear. Trent was not scheduled to give a speech. He wasn't on the program. He wasn't asked. He just stood up, cleared his throat, and tapped a fork against his wine glass like he was the Pope about to deliver a sermon. The music was still playing softly in the background. People were chatting and enjoying dessert. And here comes Trent, rising from his chair like a messiah among peasants. "Do I have a minute?" he asked. No one responded. Not because we were rude, but because we were confused. I gave him a polite smile and a shrug like, "I guess?" My wife looked at me with wide eyes like, "What is he doing?" And then the speech began. At first, it was just weird. He congratulated us, said some generic things about love and commitment. I thought maybe he was trying to wing a heartfelt moment, but then his tone shifted. Hard. He started talking about respect, about how modern society has lost touch with traditional values. Then he pivoted to how real men aren't allowed to be real men anymore in the workplace, and how some people, yes, he said that, some people get promoted not because they're qualified, but because they check the right diversity boxes. At our wedding, with a diverse guest list, in front of a literal table of my wife's co-workers, two of whom work in DEI. I was frozen. Like, did I just enter a simulation glitch? My cousin stopped mid-bite. My uncle's mouth hung open. You could feel the shift in the room. All the warmth and joy got sucked out and replaced with this sharp, uncomfortable tension. And Trent just kept going. He started talking about how he's been forced to take sensitivity training, how HR departments have gone soft, and how the world needs more people who speak hard truths. At one point, he looked directly at my wife and me and said, I hope your marriage survives the way the world's going, but don't expect support from systems built to reward weakness. That line got a few gasps, and someone, thank God, started clapping sarcastically. I don't know who it was, but bless them. That broke the spell. People shifted in their chairs, conversations restarted in hushed tones, and Trent sat back down, looking proud of himself. And that wasn't even the worst part. Two people had recorded the whole thing. Our friend Jess posted it to her private Instagram story. She captioned it, HR director rants about toxic masculinity at sister's wedding. CEO in the audience. Yep. One of our guests, who we invited because he's an old friend of my wife's family, is Trent's actual CEO. The guy had quietly sat through the whole speech, expression unreadable, sipping red wine. The next morning, I woke up to 34 unread messages. Some were, what the hell was that text from guests? Some were Instagram DMs with links, but one was from Trent's wife. She begged me to get Jess to take the video down, said it was a misunderstanding, that he'd had a little too much wine, and that he didn't mean all of it. She ended the message with, please. His job is at stake. I wish I could say I didn't laugh, but I did, because of course he didn't mean it, and of course it's everyone else's job to fix it for him. But I didn't even get the chance to intervene, because the CEO, he saw the video. Apparently multiple people had sent it to him directly. He called Trent that morning and, according to Trent's wife, said something along the lines of, this behavior doesn't align with our company's values. You've lost our trust. He was fired. No severance. Just a clean break. Now, I didn't post the video. I didn't tag anyone. Jess deleted it off her story within a few hours, mostly because she started getting messages from people saying, please take this down, Trent's on a rampage. But the damage was already done. And let me tell you, we didn't even get to eat the cake. That's how fast things spiraled. My wife was furious, not because Trent got fired. Honestly, she said that was overdue, but because her wedding was the stage he chose for his manifesto. Her voice actually cracked when she said, he made my wedding about his fragile ego. And that really was the core of it. He didn't get drunk and make a bad joke. He planned that speech. He had notes on his phone. I know because someone saw him scrolling through them beforehand. He hijacked the most important night of our lives to rant about how the world doesn't cater to him anymore. So no, I didn't ask Jess to take the video down. And no, I don't feel bad. Sometimes the best revenge is watching someone get taken down by their own words, especially when those words are recorded in 4K and broadcast to their boss in real time. We're still unpacking the drama fallout. Some family members are siding with Trent, saying he was just being honest. Others are keeping their distance. Trent himself hasn't reached out. He's been radio silent. But I did hear through the grapevine that he's looking for work. Good luck with that, buddy, especially now that you're known as the guy who used a wedding toast to whine about cancel culture in front of your CEO. Wow, this guy took read the room and threw it out the window on his way to unemployment. There's a special kind of irony in watching a corporate HR guy self-destruct because he couldn't resist delivering an unsolicited TED talk at someone else's wedding. Sometimes being the reasonable person in an unreasonable situation means watching karma show up right on schedule, wearing a tie and sipping Cabernet. Some people crash weddings, others redecorate your entire home and call it a gift. I live in a 3-bedroom apartment with 2 other guys, Matt and Chris. It's not a fancy setup, but it works. We've got a decent-sized kitchen, we split chores without too much drama, and no one leaves their toenail clippings on the coffee table. Basically, it's peaceful in that fragile way roommate situations always are, until someone brings in a wild card. That wild card's name, Alyssa. Alyssa is Chris's girlfriend, and at first she was just around. You know the type. Popped in a couple nights a week, left a toothbrush in the bathroom, maybe a hoodie in the living room. No big deal. She was nice enough in small doses, but then she started showing up more often. like 5 nights a week often. Then she started doing this thing where she'd claim stuff in the fridge. Not her stuff, our stuff. She'd tape little notes on communal groceries like, "Don't use these, Chris and I are making dinner with them." Weird, but manageable. We figured, okay, maybe she's just territorial about food. Whatever. But it didn't stop there. She began doing this subtle thing where she'd correct how things were placed around the apartment. Like, I'd come home and the throw pillows on the couch were all rotated the same way. Our shared bookshelf, alphabetized, which sounds great until you realize she threw out Matt's stack of game manuals because they weren't real books. Still, no one wanted to rock the boat. Chris was happier when she was around, and we weren't looking to turn this into some kind of Real Housewives roommate drama. But then came the kitchen incident. I remember walking in after work, dropping my keys into the bowl by the door, and immediately feeling something was off. It smelled like bleach, the good kind, industrial. I turned into the kitchen and stopped dead. Everything was different. The plates had been moved to a different cabinet. Our spice rack was gone, replaced by a sleek wooden one labeled in cursive. Pots and pans, relocated. All our pantry items had been reorganized, which apparently meant tossed out. There was a note on the fridge, handwritten, in bubbly Pinterest handwriting. "You're welcome." I deep cleaned and rearranged the kitchen so it makes sense now. Hope this inspires you all to keep things fresh. Love, Alyssa. I stood there for a solid 30 seconds, just taking it in. Then I opened the pantry and saw that she had thrown out my entire stash of instant ramen. Not expired. Just unnecessary. Her word. That was the first time I actually said, "You've got to be kidding me," out loud to no one. Matt came home next. He took one look at the kitchen, muttered, "Nope," and went straight to his room. And the worst part? Chris just didn't see the problem. When we confronted him, politely at first, he said she was just trying to help. The kitchen was kind of chaotic, to which Matt said, "Bro, she threw out my protein powder because the label was ugly." That was the tipping point. We called an emergency house meeting. Matt printed out a photo of what the kitchen used to look like and placed it on the table like it was evidence at a crime scene. I came armed with screenshots of the grocery purchases I'd made that were now mysteriously gone. We weren't even mad that she cleaned. We were mad that she treated a shared living space like her personal Pinterest board. Chris tried to play mediator at first, but eventually it was clear. Either Alyssa respected our space or she wasn't welcome in it. Then came the breaking point. Alyssa stormed in during our house meeting because Chris had texted her like a genius, and instead of apologizing, she doubled down, said we were ungrateful and that she had elevated the space. Elevated. Matt just laughed and said, "It's a kitchen, not a goop pop-up." That didn't go over well. She started crying, actual tears, and said we were bullying her for caring. Chris tried to comfort her, but we held our ground. No more surprise redecorating. No more throwing out our stuff. No more unapproved live-in status. We didn't say she couldn't visit. We said she couldn't treat the apartment like her name was on the lease. That's when she dropped the passive-aggressive nuke. The next day she returned, not to apologize, but to deliver a gift. She walked in, placed a brand new spice rack on the kitchen counter, monogrammed, of course, and said, "Since you all love the old one so much, I figured you'd appreciate this. Just a little something to keep things traditional." Then she kissed Chris on the cheek and left. By the end of the week, Chris told us he was moving out. Said the vibe wasn't the same anymore, which, yeah, no kidding. He packed his stuff, took Alyssa's spice rack with him, and left. Honestly, we were relieved. We deep cleaned the apartment, put everything back where it belonged, and celebrated with a ramen and protein shake night in honor of the pantry items that died for her aesthetic. Wow. You know it's bad when someone throws away your food and then gets offended that you're not grateful. Sometimes the most infuriating thing isn't even the mess. It's the manufactured perfection someone tries to impose on you without asking. Like, we were fine with chaos, organized chaos, not curated chaos with matching labels. Sometimes being the reasonable person means laying down boundaries when someone decides to Marie Kondo your life without permission. As wild as that was, it's nothing compared to this next story, where a dad taught his son a lesson so brutal, Reddit couldn't agree if it was genius or too far. My son Liam is 13. Smart kid, good grades, quick wit. Sometimes too quick. He's also very online, and like a lot of kids his age, he has a PS5 that he's practically fused to. Fortnite, Apex, Random obscure indie games I can't pronounce. He's on it every day after school, headset on, snacks within arm's reach, shouting into the void with his friends. I've always been okay with it, within reason. We have limits, expectations, rules, or had rules. It all started when I got an email from another parent. Not a casual, hey, your kid left his hoodie at our house kind of message. This was different. It was long, detailed. Her son, Ethan, had been getting bullied online during games. Vicious messages, cruel jokes, some targeted stuff that was way too personal to be random. She finally saw the chat logs, and Liam's name was all over them. I felt my stomach drop. Now, I'm not the not my child kind of parent. I don't see Liam as an angel who can do no wrong, but I was still stunned. This wasn't just trash talk. It was mean, calculated. There were messages making fun of Ethan's stutter, comments about his clothes, even a few screenshots of private Discord DMs that Liam had apparently leaked into the group for laughs. It was ugly, and it didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like a pattern, so I called Liam into the kitchen. I didn't yell. I didn't go full dad lecture mode. I just showed him the screenshots and asked, "Is this you?" He paused, blinked, then said, "Everyone does stuff like that. It's just jokes." And there it was, the shrug, the I don't care defense mechanism that made my blood boil more than the actual behavior. So I nodded, told him to go to his room. I said, "We'll talk later." And I sat at the table for a long time. Not just angry, but disappointed in that deep, aching way that sits in your chest like a weight. I kept thinking, what kind of person is my son becoming? What does this asterisk do to a kid like Ethan, who's already struggling? That's when I made the decision. I wasn't going to ground him. That wouldn't land. I wasn't going to take his PlayStation outright either. He'd just sulk and not understand why. Number. I wanted him to feel the consequence. Not just the punishment, but the loss. So I came up with a plan. I waited until the weekend. I told Liam we needed to clean up the living room because someone was coming by to pick something up. He didn't think much of it, just assumed it was old furniture or something. But then he saw me unplugging his PS5. He froze. "What are you doing?" he asked. I didn't answer. I just calmly started wrapping the cords, putting the console in its original box. Because yes, I'm one of those dads who saves the packaging. Then he got louder. "Wait, are you selling it?" I looked him in the eye and said, "I talked to Ethan's mum. I saw the messages. You made a kid cry every day for 2 weeks, Liam. You don't get to keep something you used as a weapon." He started panicking. "But I didn't mean it like that. It's not that serious. I was just messing around." And right there, in that moment, watching the fear set in, I knew I had his attention. The doorbell rang. A friend of mine, Mark, was waiting outside. He walked in, nodded at Liam, picked up the box and said, "Thanks, man," then left. Liam completely broke. He screamed, like actual sobbing, red-faced meltdown, stormed to his room, slammed the door, wouldn't speak to me for hours. And honestly, that part sucked. It really did. But I stood my ground. I let it simmer. That night after dinner, I knocked on his door. I didn't go in. I just slid a piece of paper under it, a pen and a prompt. Write a real apology, one that takes responsibility. Not one you think will get you out of trouble. No response. 30 minutes later, I heard the scratch of a pen. An hour after that, he slid the paper back out. It wasn't perfect. It still had some teen defensiveness baked in. But it was honest. He admitted he targeted Ethan. He wrote about feeling powerful in the group and not realizing how far it went. He said he was sorry, not just because he got caught, but because he saw how it looked from the outside. He even ended with, "If I were Ethan, I'd hate me too." I stood outside his door holding that letter, and for the first time all day, I exhaled. The next morning, I knocked again. This time, I walked in. I handed him the PS5. Yeah, I never actually sold it. Mark just took it to his garage for a day. We even took a stage photo of him driving away with it, just to sell the moment. I told Liam the truth, but I also told him this wasn't over. He'd be delivering that apology to Ethan in person, not over text. And he'd be taking a break from online gaming for a while, not because I didn't trust him, but because he needed to rebuild what he'd broken. He didn't argue. He just nodded. Now, here's where things got interesting. I posted the story, anonymously, of course, to a parenting subreddit. I wanted to see how others would have handled it. The response? Divided. Some people called me a genius, said it was a masterclass in creative parenting. Others said I was cruel, that I emotionally manipulated my son, and that selling a prized possession, even faking it, was traumatic. And maybe they're not entirely wrong. But I'll say this, Liam hasn't gone back to that friend group. He's been more present, more thoughtful. He started checking in with people instead of ganging up on them. And last week, Ethan's mum texted me to say he and Liam actually talked after school, for the first time since it all went down. He apologized, for real, and Ethan forgave him. Sometimes teaching kids empathy takes more than a lecture. Sometimes they need to feel what it's like to lose something, just a taste of the consequences they've created for others. Wow, I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting that to get so heated. But watching a teenager melt down over a console he thought he lost forever, that's the kind of poetic justice that sticks. Sometimes the best parenting move isn't the one that feels nice, it's the one that teaches something deeper. And yeah, maybe I'll be paying for his therapy down the road, but if it helps him grow into someone with actual empathy, worth it. Brutal parenting might have worked here, but the next parent went completely off the rails defending their son's failure at work. I've worked in retail management for a while now, long enough to develop the sixth sense that tells you when an employee's about to become your entire personality for the week. So when Tyler got hired, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. He was 19, had some retail experience, seemed chill in the interview. But right out the gate, there were issues, chronic lateness, showing up 15 minutes late like it was a casual personality trait. I pulled him aside the third time it happened, gave the whole, we're a team here, and the schedule is a shared agreement talk. He nodded, promised to improve, and then, surprise, was late again the next shift. And again, and again. Then came the no call, no show. That was my limit. Per company policy, 3 strikes and you're out. Tyler was at 5, so I wrote him up, filed it with HR, and called him into the office. He barely sat down before saying, "Is this about me being late again?" "It's not that serious," I told him, respectfully but clearly, that this wasn't working out and we'd be parting ways. He blinked, then said, "You can't fire me. My mum's gonna freak." I thought he was joking. He was not. 2 hours later, she called the store. I wish I was exaggerating when I say she screamed at me over speakerphone, full Karen volume. She accused me of bullying her baby and destroying his future over a couple minutes. I calmly explained the policy. I even offered to send her a copy of the signed write-ups. She hung up. That night, she left a 1-star Google review for the store, calling me by name and claiming I terrorize young employees to inflate my own ego. I thought that would be the end of it. But that wasn't even the worst part. The next day, she showed up to the store with Tyler. They stood outside during my shift with homemade protest signs. I'm not kidding. Hers said "Justice for Tyler," and his said "Wrongfully terminated." She paced the sidewalk like she was unionizing the building. Tyler stood there awkwardly like he'd rather be anywhere else. Which, yeah, mood. Customers were confused. A few laughed. One guy came in and asked, "Are you guys on strike or something?" I called mall security. They said technically if they stayed on public property and weren't disruptive, there wasn't much they could do. So I did the next best thing. I kept receipts, screenshots, time cards, write-ups, notes from our meetings, video from our clock-in system. I bundled it all up and sent it to corporate with a clear professional summary of the situation. A few days later, I got a call from my district manager. He sounded tired, like he'd aged 3 years from reading the complaint emails she'd sent. She'd gone nuclear. She'd written to the regional office, left negative Yelp reviews, called HR 3 times, demanding my termination. One of her emails was titled, "This is why Gen Z has no loyalty." But my manager, he had my back, said my documentation was airtight, said corporate had flagged her number and she'd been told she was banned from all company property. Then he paused and asked if I'd be interested in a promotion. Apparently, corporate was impressed that I handled a highly escalated emotional outburst with measured professionalism, which is a fancy way of saying I didn't scream into the void when a grown woman brought her adult son to protest his own. Firing. Wow. Some people call HR. This woman staged a 1-person picket line. Sometimes I wonder if Tyler even wanted to be there. I mean, he looked like a hostage in a bad student film. His mum was doing all the yelling, all the reviewing, all the foot stomping. He was just standing there, holding a sign someone else clearly made for him. And that's the saddest part. Because maybe, if she'd let him face a consequence or two, he wouldn't be the kind of guy who needs rescuing every time reality knocks. Sometimes being the reasonable person in an unreasonable situation makes you look like the bad guy, until the other side grabs poster board and a megaphone. You'd think no one could top that for unhinged behavior. But wait until you meet the bride who created a wedding seating chart so petty it caused a family breakup. Weddings are supposed to bring people together, not divide them like a high school lunchroom. But my cousin Sophie's wedding? Yeah, it felt more like a red carpet event where I didn't get the dress code memo. It started with the seating chart. Now, I'm not the kind of person who expects to be front and center at every family function. I get that I'm not one of the golden children. But when I walked into the reception and saw where I was seated, table 14, far corner, next to the emergency exit, I figured maybe it was just a weird logistical decision. Until I looked around. Our table was specific. We were all around the same age, mostly women, all single. And not to be rude, but we definitely weren't the bride's Instagram-friendly crowd. This wasn't random. And then I overheard someone say it. "Oh, you're at the ugly friends table too?" I laughed, thinking it was a joke, but she wasn't kidding. Apparently, someone from Sophie's college crew had seen the final seating chart before the wedding. And it wasn't just names and table numbers, it was labeled hot, VIP, not ideal for photos, and, my personal favorite, filler vibes. We were under not ideal for photos. Let me tell you, that hits different when you're trying to enjoy overpriced chicken in a polyester bridesmaid dress. I tried to brush it off. Weddings are chaotic, and maybe Sophie didn't mean it literally. Maybe it was some planner's internal thing that got out of hand. But then I saw her bridal party's Instagram posts. Every photo was filtered, airbrushed, perfectly curated, and not a single shot of table 14. Then came the breaking point. Someone, no one knows who, snapped a photo of the physical seating chart taped behind the coordinator's podium. The version with the actual labels. And, yep, there it was in black Sharpie, hot and photogenic, family musts, influencer allies, and ugly friends. Literally. It said ugly friends. I wish I was making that up. That photo went viral. Someone uploaded it to a Reddit wedding drama thread and it exploded. Hundreds of comments, memes, people sleuthing through her bridal party's TikToks. It turned into a full-on internet roast. Normally, I'd feel bad for the bride. But Sophie wasn't exactly subtle about her obsession with aesthetic consistency. She once asked me to maybe wear a little more concealer to a family dinner so I'd match the group selfie. So no, my sympathy tank was running low. And here's where it went from petty to career-ending. See, Sophie worked in PR. She'd just landed a job at a lifestyle branding agency that preached diversity, inclusivity, and empowering authentic beauty. Their actual tagline was "Real faces, real stories." Well, someone tagged her company in the Reddit thread. Then people started digging. Old interviews, blog posts where Sophie talked about the importance of lifting women up. One commenter even found a clip of her saying, "Looks are never the point, we focus on heart." Yikes. By the next Monday, her company had made a statement. It was vague, sure, but the phrasing said it all. "We've been made aware of behavior that does not reflect our company's values. The employee is no longer with us. She got fired." Or mutually separated, if you want to go full corporate lingo. And suddenly all those filtered wedding pics disappeared. Her Instagram went private, her TikTok wiped clean. Her LinkedIn got quietly updated with seeking new opportunities. Look, I don't think Sophie is a monster, but she is someone who treated her wedding like a casting call. And when you reduce people to set dressing, don't be surprised when they don't clap for your spotlight moment. Wow, this woman really created a high school cafeteria vibe in formal wear and called it love. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't planned. It's just watching someone's own obsession with status become the rope they tie around their own career. And hey, table 14, we bonded over it. We're literally planning a reunion brunch next month. Turns out the ugly friends table had the best stories, the best snacks, and the only people who didn't treat the wedding like a branding opportunity. Speaking of weddings, here's a groom who found out his fiancée was stealing from his disabled sister. And the way he exposed her? Devastating. My sister Molly has cerebral palsy. She's nonverbal, uses a wheelchair, and needs round-the-clock care. She's also my favorite person in the world, the kind of person who makes you laugh without saying a word, just by raising an eyebrow or giving you a look that says, "Really? That's your outfit today?" I've been her primary caregiver since our mom passed away, and I've never once resented it. If anything, it made me more selective about who I let into our lives. So when I met Claire, I thought I'd finally found someone who got it. She was sweet with Molly, attentive, acted like she wanted to help. She'd wheel her out onto the porch in the afternoons, paint her nails, even sing to her sometimes. I remember thinking, I could marry this woman tomorrow. But then things started going missing. At first, it was small, $20 from the envelope I kept in the kitchen drawer for emergency groceries. Then some of Molly's anxiety meds, low dosage stuff, nothing addictive but important. I asked our nurse if she'd used extra. She hadn't. Then a gift card Molly's friend had given her disappeared. And one night, Molly kept motioning toward the cabinet where her supplies are stored, then back toward Claire's purse over and over again, eyes locked on mine. I didn't want to believe it. I really didn't. But the math wasn't mathing. So I did what any paranoid brother with a growing pit in his stomach would do. I bought 2 hidden cameras. One went in the kitchen above the cabinet, and the other in the hallway pointed at the door to Molly's room. Just enough to catch movement, not enough to invade her privacy. It took 2 days. 2. I watched Claire wait until the nurse went home, then walk casually into the kitchen, open the cabinet, and slip something into her purse. The timestamp matched the exact moment a bottle of meds went missing. The next day, she did it again, but this time she checked her reflection in the microwave while doing it, like it was a casual part of her routine. That's when my hands started shaking, not from anger at first, but from this weird, hollow kind of disbelief, like watching someone you love peel off a mask and reveal a stranger underneath. But that wasn't even the worst part. I checked her search history on the shared iPad. There it was, clear as day, how to sell unused prescriptions and quick cash from home no job. So yeah, that's when the anger kicked in. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. See, we had our wedding rehearsal dinner coming up, a fancy little Italian spot her parents were paying for. Candlelight, slideshow, the whole look how far we've come presentation. She was so excited about the slideshow, kept adding photos to it. Wanted to include clips of us caring for Molly to show how wholesome we were. I added a few of my own. The first half of the dinner went fine. Wine, bread, laughter, speeches from the bridal party. Then it was time for the slideshow. The lights dimmed. The screen came down. The first few slides were sweet. Us at the beach, Molly in her chair with a sun hat, Claire holding her hand. Everyone awed. Then the footage started. Grainy black and white clips of Claire in my kitchen, pocketing medication bottles. Another clip, her unzipping her purse in the hallway, taking money from the emergency fund drawer. Silence. Complete, deafening silence. Then gasps. Claire stared at the screen like she didn't recognize herself. Her father stood up, said, "What the hell is this?" Claire turned to me and hissed, "You're sick." I said, "Not as sick as someone stealing meds from a disabled woman." The room erupted. Her mom was crying. My best man, bless him, started slow clapping until he realized no one else was joining in. Claire stormed out and her maid of honor followed after her. The slideshow ended with a simple slide that said, "Wedding cancelled." I paid the bill. Her parents didn't stop me. I think they were too embarrassed to argue. After that, I went straight to the police. I gave them the footage, the timestamps, the inventory logs. Molly's nurse helped with a statement. It took a few weeks, but eventually Claire was charged with theft and possession of controlled substances without a prescription. She pled out, got community service and probation, and a record. Her friends, most of them ghosted. Her employer found out. She'd been working for a non-profit that supports special needs families. Let that sink in. Wow. She didn't just steal from someone vulnerable. She built her entire image around being a caregiver. That's some Olympic-level hypocrisy. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or flashy. It's just showing people exactly who someone is, in the moment they most want to be adored. Molly's okay now, by the way. She's safe, happy, thriving. We got a new nurse, and the nail polish Claire left behind, We threw it in the trash. That story was heavy, but don't worry, the next one is pure, satisfying pettiness involving a gym, a Karen, and a treadmill set to max speed. I've been going to the same gym for 3 years. Same routine, same trainer, same 7:30 a.m. slot every Tuesday and Thursday. I'm not hardcore, but I like structure. And more importantly, I like not getting injured because someone decided to hijack the treadmill, like it's a Disneyland ride. So imagine my surprise when I show up for my usual session, and there's already someone on my treadmill. Same one I use every week, same time, even has my name on the little digital booking screen. But this woman, she's running like she owns the building. I go over to the front desk and ask if maybe the system double booked or something. They glance over and give me the shrug of doom. You know the one. The "we don't want to deal with this right now" shrug. One of the staff says she said she booked it in the app. We didn't see her name but didn't want to cause a scene. Ah, Karen logic has entered the chat. So I approach her politely, calm, casual, just, "Hey, I think there's been a mix-up. I had this slot with my trainer." She doesn't even look at me. Just says, "You should have gotten here earlier if you wanted it that bad." I blink. My trainer Mike starts to say something, but she cuts him off. I already started, so I'm not stopping. Talk to someone else. At this point, I'm just stunned, because the treadmill literally has my name on it. And instead of acknowledging the mix-up or even faking an apology, she doubles down with a full eye roll and turns up her AirPods like she's in an early 2000s workout montage. So Mike and I move to the weights area, try to salvage what we can of the session, but the longer I watch her smug little ponytail bounce on my treadmill, the more I start planning. Because see, Mike's been training me long enough that he trusts me with certain settings on the gym console, including the remote control system for the treadmills used for live coaching. And that's when the idea hits. I ask Mike quietly, "Can I mess with the settings a little?" He gives me a raised eyebrow, then slowly grins. "Just don't break her." Now the remote system lets you gradually increase treadmill speed and incline for interval training. Normally, it's used to push clients through sprints, but in the wrong hands, it's basically Mario Kart with fewer rules. So I connect to her treadmill. She's still running at a modest jog, probably thinking she's absolutely killing it. I start inching up the speed, very slowly, from 5.5 to 6.0, then 6.5. She's panting a little now, looks down, presses buttons, confused. Nothing happens, because once a trainer takes remote control, the manual settings are locked. She slows for a second, then speeds back up like she doesn't want to show weakness. That's when I notch it to 7.0, then 7.5. At 8.0, her form starts breaking down. She's holding the side rails, huffing like she just ran from a horror movie villain. She hits the stop button. Nothing. She tries again. Still nothing. And then, like a final boss level, I hit max speed, 12.0. She tries to jump off gracefully. She does not. She flies. Like full cartoon style, flailing limbs, lands flat on the mat behind the treadmill, with a gasp loud enough to make everyone in the gym turn. I hit the emergency stop, walk over, look down. Oh no. Are you okay? That treadmill gets fast real quick if you're not ready. Karen glares up at me like she knows. She knows, but she can't prove a thing. Mike walks over, expression neutral, and helps her up while explaining that guests aren't supposed to override trainer bookings, and that she could have been seriously hurt using a machine she wasn't cleared for. She's furious, starts ranting to the front desk, demanding someone get fired. But the manager watches the security footage, shrugs, and says, "You weren't booked. You took someone else's slot. And it looks like you just lost control of the machine." Karen screams, "I'm calling corporate." The manager calmly replies, "Great, I'll forward the footage to them myself." And that was the breaking point. Karen left in a storm of sweat, pride, and possibly bruised elbows. The next day, I got a call from the gym manager asking if I'd be interested in becoming a part-time assistant trainer. Said they liked how I handled a tense guest interaction creatively. Translation: revenge cardio is now a resume skill. Wow. Some people trip on a treadmill. Others trip over their own entitlement and land on poetic justice. Sometimes the best revenge doesn't need a confrontation. It just needs a treadmill, a slow burn, and a top speed button. And if you thought that was satisfying, the next revenge involves office politics, a fake resignation letter, and one manager's public downfall. My old boss, Greg, was the kind of guy who called himself a visionary leader, but couldn't figure out how to attach a PDF. You know the type. Loved buzzwords, took credit for other people's work, held meetings that could have been emails, and then sent follow-up emails about those meetings. When I first joined the team, I thought he was just intense, but over time, it became clear. Greg didn't lead so much as threaten, subtle stuff mostly. Constant jokes about how replaceable people were, making passive-aggressive comments in front of directors. If you corrected him about literally anything, he'd get this tight smile and say, "Noted," which was code for, "You're on my list now." Eventually, I became the list. Why? Because I dared to make a simple suggestion during a team presentation. Greg had been pitching this innovative reporting structure that basically involved Excel, just like a slightly more colorful spreadsheet. I suggested a different tool we'd used successfully at my old job. He froze, smiled, said, "Thanks for your feedback," then didn't speak to me directly for 3 weeks. Things got weirder after that. He started giving me impossible deadlines, assigning me to projects, then denying I was ever assigned when I followed up. He'd copy directors on emails where he gently reminded me of fake tasks I'd missed. I started documenting everything. Then, one Friday afternoon, he called me into his office with that same tight smile and a printed piece of paper in his hand. He said, "I wanted to give you the chance to exit gracefully before we escalate this further. I drafted a resignation letter for you. You just need to sign." I stared at him. For a second, I thought he was joking. He was not. He actually handed it to me and said, "This way, no one has to ask questions. You get to keep your reputation clean." I took the letter. Read it. It said I was leaving due to performance challenges and personal misalignment with the team's direction. It was written in Comic Sans. The audacity was breathtaking. I asked him, "What happens if I don't sign this?" He shrugged. "Then we go to HR. But I've documented your issues already." "They'll take my word for it," so I nodded. Said I needed the weekend to think. Then I got to work. I opened the Word doc he'd printed, recreated it exactly. Same spacing, same font, same wording. But I added one small thing. I misspelled the company name. Just one letter. Easy to miss, easy to overlook, but just enough to be traceable if you knew what to look for. Then I printed it. Left it in a folder labeled Greg's Project Notes and waited. Sure enough, on Monday, I got a call from HR. They wanted to discuss next steps regarding your resignation. I said, "I haven't submitted anything." They said, "We received a typed letter from your manager." So I asked for a copy, and there it was, the same resignation letter, with my typo. Game on. I told HR I'd never sent it, never signed it, never authorized it. And when they asked how I knew it wasn't a coincidence, I explained. The typo was something I'd used before as a unique tag in doc testing. It was a deliberate marker. They brought in IT. Turns out Greg had opened the letter on his desktop at 9:13 a.m., copy-pasted it into an email, and sent it to HR at 9:17. No edits, no review, just straight-up fraud. The fallout came fast. Greg tried to say it was a draft and that he'd meant to discuss it with me, but HR wasn't buying it, especially since I had an email from the day before where he'd said, "We both know this is the cleanest way forward." The breaking point? He CC'd a senior director on the fake resignation email, before he even told me about it. By the end of the week, he was reassigned to a non-managerial role in another department. The official language was transitioning into a more focused contributor position. Translation, demoted. As for me, quietly moved to a better team under a new manager who actually knew what he was doing. HR even asked if I wanted to file a formal complaint, but I said no. I didn't need a courtroom. I already had the win. Wow. Some bosses weaponize incompetence. Greg weaponized Comic Sans and thought no one would notice. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge doesn't come from screaming in a meeting. It comes from letting someone copy-paste their own downfall, one typo at a time. That was poetic justice, but nothing compared to this family story, where a dog inheritance caused a full-scale meltdown. When my dad passed away, he didn't leave behind a mansion or a stock portfolio. What he left was a 12-year-old golden retriever named Max, and more chaos than you'd think one dog could cause. Max wasn't just a pet. He was my dad's whole world after my mom died. He went with him everywhere: grocery runs, doctor's appointments, even the occasional drive-through just so Max could get a plain burger. Toward the end, when Dad got sick, Max slept beside his hospital bed at home every single night. And I was the one who took care of both of them. I moved into Dad's house the last year of his life, handled meds, drove him to appointments, cooked meals, made sure Max still got his walks even when I was exhausted. My siblings, not so much. My older sister made it to maybe 2 birthdays in 5 years. My brother would pop in around holidays, usually when he needed something: money, a signature, a quick favor. But when Dad died, suddenly they remembered they were part of the family. We met at the attorney's office for the will reading. Everyone was tense. Dad wasn't rich, but there were still things people wanted: his classic record collection, a bit of money in savings, the house. And then came Max. The attorney read the part of the will where Dad clearly said, "Max goes to me, no discussion. He's happiest with them, and they know his needs best." Then came the kicker. If anyone contests this or tries to fight over the dog, you're out of the estate, period. There was actual silence. I looked over at my siblings. My sister looked offended, like the will had just slapped her. My brother laughed under his breath and muttered, "Guess Dad was already losing it." I let it slide for about 5 days. Then came the texts from both of them. "We should all get a say in Max's care. You don't own him just because you lived closer. Dad would have wanted us to share." Share. The dog? Like he was a timeshare. I told them no, politely at first. I explained that Max was settled, that moving him around would stress him out, that our dad's wishes were literally written in legal ink. But that wasn't even the worst part. We had a small memorial at my aunt's place, just a backyard gathering with close family. I brought Max because he still got anxious when I left him alone too long. At one point, I went inside to help carry out food. I wasn't gone more than 5 minutes. When I came back out, Max was gone. I looked around, heart pounding. Then I saw my brother halfway down the block with Max on a leash, hustling toward his truck. I ran after them, called out. He didn't stop. Max was barking, confused, not panicked, but clearly not happy. I caught up and demanded he let go. He had the nerve to say, "Dad would have wanted this." "I've got a yard. You live in an apartment." "This makes more sense," I said. "You're literally kidnapping a dog from a funeral." He rolled his eyes. "Relax. He'll be happier with me I took the leash." He didn't fight back, but he did call me selfish and walked off muttering something about fixing it in court. That was the breaking point. I went home, called my lawyer, filed a restraining order the next morning. Yes, over a dog. But more importantly, I uploaded a clip I'd been holding on to, a video from Dad's final weeks. In it, he's sitting with Max, rubbing his ears, and he says to the camera, "If anyone tries to take Max from me, they're not just disrespecting me, they're disrespecting him. I've already made it clear in the will, but in case anyone doubts it, let this be my last word. He stays with me. And if you can't handle that, you don't get anything else." It wasn't meant to be public, but I posted it on my private social media for the extended family to see. Because the gossip had already started, my siblings were trying to spin it as me being possessive. That video changed the narrative real quick. Suddenly my inbox was filled with messages like, "Wow, I didn't know it was that serious," and "Your dad was so clear, I'm so sorry you're dealing with this." A few relatives even messaged my siblings and told them to back off. And the kicker? After the restraining order and the video, the attorney confirmed they were officially disqualified from the estate. Dad's clause about no dog disputes went into effect. They lost out on everything: house proceeds, savings, collectibles, all over a dog they barely visited. Wow, some people lose the plot so hard they forget dogs have memories. Max knew who had been there, and so did Dad. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's your dad speaking from the grave with a video and a will that reads like a mic drop. And just when you think you've heard it all, someone gets revenge by changing the Wi-Fi name in the most savage way possible. My neighbor Scott was the kind of guy who treated his cul-de-sac like a stage, and his wife like she was just an unfortunate background actor in his one-man drama. We all knew couples who bicker. This wasn't that. This was yelling at her over the recycling bin, criticizing her landscaping choices like she worked for him, and bragging constantly about how lucky she was that he took care of things. It was exhausting and loud. My office window faced their backyard, so I couldn't help but hear the daily lectures about her spending habits or how emotional she was being. One time she asked him to help unload groceries, and he straight up said, "That's what wives are for." I'd love to say it was shocking, but unfortunately Scott had that vibe. The kind where he probably quoted Joe Rogan to explain away basic empathy. Anyway, one Thursday night, I'm working late when I hear him on his patio phone call. Loud, smug, pacing like he's delivering a TED talk to the squirrels. He's laughing, like actually giggling, and says, "No, babe, I told her I'm staying late for work." She's clueless. I could spend the night at your place and she wouldn't notice. Then, "Ashley, relax. I've got this under control, Ashley." Not his wife's name. His wife's name is Brooke. And that was the moment I hit my petty breaking point. Now, I'm not a fan of inserting myself into people's private drama, unless they scream it on their Bluetooth speaker while standing 6 feet from my window. So the next morning, I did what any mildly tech-savvy neighbor with a Wi-Fi router and a vendetta would do. I changed my Wi-Fi name to "Ashley is not his wife." Nothing else, no commentary, just vibes. The first time I checked the available networks list from my phone, glorious. Netgear 5G, Smith Family Wi-Fi, Ashley is not his wife, sitting proudly in the middle like a digital billboard. I didn't expect much, maybe a side eye, maybe nothing at all. But oh, did it deliver? Because Saturday was the neighborhood barbecue, Scott's favorite day of the month. He always acted like he was hosting the Oscars in his driveway. Grill out, sunglasses on, chest puffed. His wife would be quietly setting things up while he talked about how hard he worked all week. I waited, watered my plants, acted casual. Then I saw Brooke standing by the cooler, phone in hand, frozen. She looked up slowly, then looked at Scott, who was mid-story about getting the best deals at Home Depot. She showed him the phone. He laughed at first, then stopped, then turned bright red. He looked toward my house. I waved. They packed everything up in under 15 minutes. Grill off, chairs folded, no goodbye, just barbecue cancelled. But that wasn't even the worst part. Monday morning, Brooke was gone. Not like a she's at yoga kind of gone. Like moving truck in the driveway at 7 a.m. kind of gone. A few hours later, she drove off with her dog, her houseplants, and a very determined expression. The kind of expression that says, "I don't need to scream. I have receipts and a lawyer." Scott still lives there. Alone now. He's very quiet these days. No more backyard phone calls. No more driveway performances. He even parks differently now, like he's trying not to draw attention to himself. Wow. All that ego, and the thing that took him down was a Wi-Fi name with 22 characters and a grudge. Sometimes the best revenge doesn't need confrontation. It just needs signal strength and a front row seat to someone's own unraveling. One last story before we wind things down, about a mum, a stolen science fair project, and a revenge email that ended in suspension. My son Jonah is 10 years old and fully convinced he's going to be an engineer. This is the same kid who once tried to reverse engineer a broken toaster because he wanted to know how it failed. So when the school announced its annual science fair, he went full mad scientist. His project? A working mini wind turbine made from salvaged fan parts, cardboard blades, and a tiny LED setup that lit up when the blades spun. I wish I could take credit for helping, but honestly, I was mostly there to hold things in place, while he hot-glued everything within a 3-mile radius of our dining room table. Over 2 weeks, we documented the build with photos. Not for proof or anything, just because it was adorable. Him in his goggles, holding pliers like he was building the next Mars rover. We even had a little time-lapse of him testing different blade shapes to see which gave the most spin. The kid was so proud. Then came the day before the fair. We were supposed to bring the projects in early to be locked in the school library overnight. Jonah carefully packed his turbine in a box labeled with his name in big black marker, along with his data sheets and notes. We dropped it off with the front office, and the receptionist gave us the usual, "We'll take good care of it" line. The next morning, Jonah was practically vibrating with excitement. We walked into the gym where all the displays were set up, and his project wasn't there. We checked every table. Nothing. At first, I thought maybe they'd forgotten to unpack it. So I asked one of the teachers, who looked at the roster and said, "Oh, actually, we do have a wind turbine project. That must be it." She pointed toward a table at the far end of the gym, and I'll give her credit, there was a wind turbine. But it wasn't labeled Jonah's. It had a completely different student's name on it. One I recognized, Kaylee from the same grade. Her mum, Vanessa, was already there, beaming proudly, talking to another parent about how Kaylee's creativity just blows us away every year. I walked over, looked at the project, same cardboard blade design, same salvaged fan motor, same chipped base where Jonah had accidentally dropped a screwdriver on it during the build. It was his. I asked the teacher again if there'd been a mix-up. She frowned and said, "Well, we have the submission form signed by Kaylee's parent. If there's a problem, you can talk to the principal." Meanwhile, Jonah was just quiet. He kept staring at the project like he couldn't even process what was happening. I took his hand and said, "Let's go get some air," because I was dangerously close to saying something I couldn't take back in front of a cafeteria full of 10-year-olds. Once we got home, I pulled out my laptop and opened the photo album I'd been updating all month. Time-stamped photos from day one. Jonah sketching the design on a napkin, building the frame, testing it with a hairdryer. Even a shot of the turbine sitting in the exact same box we dropped off. But that wasn't even the worst part. I texted a friend who works in the school office and asked, very casually, if they could check the drop-off log. Turns out Jonah's box was signed in by the receptionist, but it never made it into the library. At some point, someone must have taken it after check-in. Gee, I wonder who. The breaking point came when Jonah asked me if maybe Kaylee had just made the same thing by accident. My kid, the same one who calculated wind force ratios using LEGOS, was trying to rationalize someone stealing his work. That's when I opened my email. I sent a message to the principal, copied the science fair coordinator, attached the photo timeline, including the time-stamped video of Jonah building the turbine. I also attached a screenshot from the school newsletter asking for early drop-off and the photo of Jonah holding the finished turbine in front of our house. And then, just for fun, I blind CC'd the local paper. Not because I needed it to go public, but because I wanted the school to know it could. By 3 p.m., I got a call. The principal sounded rattled, said there had been a serious oversight and they were investigating how Jonah's project had been misattributed. She said Kaylee's mom had insisted it was hers, but the documentation you provided raises some very serious concerns. Yeah, that's one way to phrase blatant theft. By the next morning, there was a new name on the wind turbine project, Jonah's. Kaylee's project was withdrawn. A notice was sent out to all parents explaining that a disqualification had taken place due to violation of academic integrity guidelines. And at the award ceremony, Jonah won first place with a bonus certificate for innovation and effort. But wait, there's more. Because 2 days later, a column appeared in the local paper's education section. It didn't name names, but it very clearly described a science fair incident where a student's project was appropriated by another parent and falsely submitted under a different name. The article praised the school's quick correction, but also called for stronger oversight in academic settings where parental involvement is common. Vanessa? She went very quiet on Facebook after that. Wow, some parents steal other kids' spotlight. This one stole a wind turbine and got hit with a PR storm. Sometimes being the reasonable person in an unreasonable situation makes you look like the bad guy. Until the receipts show up, that story is over. And if your faith in humanity feels slightly restored, or at least entertained, you've made it through the chaos with us. Sweet dreams, everyone. And remember, even the wildest drama eventually turns into someone else's bedtime story. I'll see you in the next one.